Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Point After Podcast. This is College Football Episode 2. Last week, we talked about the Week 1 in SEC, talked about Air Raid, talked about Mike Leach with a big welcome to the SEC. Kyle Trask, Kyle Pitts put on a really good show. And we have the same to talk about this week, but also the opposite. Florida's dominance continued. Mike Leach got beat by Arkansas and Felipe Franks. That's not right. Yeah, it's right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Arkansas
okay.
upset 12-14.
Yep. So we're back. Picture of Mac Jones this week. It's not Mac Jones though. We have Matthew. How are you doing?
Doing good, man. Had to do Mac Jones. You know, as you already know, Bama fans here, and I'm paying my respects where they're due. Mac Jones has been showing out.
We have to bring awareness. That's what we're here for.
Exactly.
Bring awareness to slept-on players and slept-on movements such as respect the air raid. Anyway, we'll get on into the first topic, and we'll stay with the SEC. Or do you want to recap Week 5 a little bit, talk about what happened?
Yeah, that's fine.
We'll do that. Pull up the stuff from last week. We have...
No brainer. Talk about first. Got to be Oklahoma. A loss to Iowa State. Did not see that one coming.
Yeah, I didn't either. And I spent a lot of time yesterday looking into the Big 12 in general with Iowa State, Kansas State, Oklahoma, Texas, more so as to who they've played and who they've beat. And it's crazy to me that Oklahoma State is currently first in the Big 12, and then Iowa State and Kansas State are tied for second.
Yeah.
But what's weird is Kansas State, they beat Oklahoma last year. So they're kind of one of those, I guess you could call it bubble teams, where they can go off on any week. They're just not consistent in what they do. And last year and the last two seasons, Iowa State has one of the best defenses nationally, not just in the Big 12. Now, obviously, they don't put up great numbers like Alabama's defense or Clemson's defense or things like that because they're playing in the Big 12. But just collectively, as a whole, those are two teams that could go any week and upset anybody, which we've saw this season.
Right, exactly. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's not really how many points you can give up. You got to be able to put up more points. But that comes to effect, you know, when the playoffs roll around and you can't put up points, but you're still going to give up, 25 or 30. I think that's what hurts these type of teams. But I agree with you, man. That after watching Iowa State last week, I can seriously see them going on a 1-2 all season.
Yeah, and I mean TCU is another one of those teams that they've had a really good outing this season so far. They haven't played big games, obviously. I mean, they just beat Texas, but just the other teams they've played, no one really eye-popping. But they're still a good team, and it's that's the problem with the Big 12 is a lot of teams are slept on, but it's because you're playing in a conference where every week, teams are scoring over 40 points like it's nothing. Like there is no defense in the Big 12, and that's why teams get overlooked, in my opinion. But I mean, most teams are again running some sort of air raid variation.
Right.
And the Pac-10 are the same way. When you get Oregon, you get Washington State. Former Washington State. I don't know how they're going to be this year. Teams like that, it's the same way. You got good teams, but then again, they can get upset any week just because you have to be able to outscore somebody. And Texas is currently the number one team in the nation in points scored, or average points per game, and they still got beat by TCU last week. So that's just the college football world we live in.
Yep, could have been anybody. I mean, look at Auburn. I did not expect them to. I could see them losing, but I did not expect them to lose, and especially in the fashion that they did.
Yeah, and what's crazy to me too is I'm gonna say this, and I've got a scenario that I want to talk to you about. Iowa State beat TCU and beat Oklahoma, and then TCU beat Texas. What happens if Oklahoma beats Texas this week?
Which I think will happen. But we'll talk predictions later. It's just going to be a mess. I think if, an Oklahoma team wins this week, outside of your who Oklahoma State is the highest ranked Big 12 team right now.
I think
Outside of
so.
them,
Yeah.
yeah, I think they're 10th, 3-0, but still, if Oklahoma wins, and Oklahoma State doesn't have a good season, you could potentially be looking at a college football playoff with no Big 12 teams.
Yeah. In my opinion, if Texas loses on Saturday to Oklahoma, both of those teams are out for sure. And you can make the case that the Big 12 is out completely.
Yeah, because
But
no, I don't think Oklahoma's going to be in, regardless of if they went out. Already had what, 2 losses?
yeah, two
Well,
lost Oklahoma teams out, two lost Texas teams out. So, but that kind of gets me to this scenario. I was brainstorming the other day, yesterday actually, and I came up with this scenario. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure this could happen. We could have a situation where there are there are 4 one-loss SEC teams, where Alabama is 1 loss to Auburn, Auburn's 1 loss to Georgia, Florida's 1 loss to Auburn in the SEC championship, and Alabama is 1 loss to Georgia. I think that's right, unless no, Florida and Georgia played this year.
right.
I came up with
Well,
some scenario yesterday.
Alabama and Georgia also play.
Yeah, I came up with some scenario yesterday where there was a 4-way tie with a 1 loss, or there were 4 teams in the SEC that were all 1 loss heading into the playoffs.
Tennessee's still undefeated.
Yeah.
But they played, Florida, Georgia, and Tennessee or Alabama. So
Yeah, but
they'll
that gets me to where I don't think there's a 2-loss Big 12 team that gets in. I could see, unless a Big 12 team goes undefeated, I don't think the Big 12 team makes the playoff just with how it's shaped up the first couple of weeks.
So who's still undefeated in the Big 12 outside of Oklahoma State?
I don't think anybody, because Kansas State and Iowa State are both 2-1.
Right.
So as far as I know, I don't think anybody is. Let me pull it up. NCAA football
So,
standings.
for Iowa State to have the best chance, they would have to win out, and same, with Oklahoma State.
Yes.
I just don't think a one-loss Pac or Big 12 team gets in, regardless if they win the conference or not. I don't think it's the right move. Just from showing, the diversity amongst, how good the teams are. Either they're all equally as good or they're all equally as bad so far.
Yes. Like you said, I don't think unless they go undefeated in the Big 12, they're not going to make the playoffs. And that's just it. Kind of goes back to this too. Miami plays Clemson Saturday. They lose, go on, they beat Notre Dame. Then you got a 1-loss Miami team whose only loss is to the ACC champion. They're not going to play in the ACC championship because they're in different divisions, or they're in the same division. So that's like whoever wins this on Saturday, as long as they run the table, then you basically count them in. But you can make the case for whoever loses that they should be in the playoffs over whoever wins the Big 12. So it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out. But the way it's looking right now, the Big 12 does not have a good shot at making the college football playoff.
Yep.
But we'll get into that a little bit later on when we talk about the playoffs. But we'll stay with the Texas and Oklahoma, the Red River rivalry. I can't talk, can't say my L's, never have been able to do so. Is Oklahoma falling off? Are they on the downhill slide to where they were on the mountaintop year in, year out, winner of the Big 12? Do you see them declining now, or is this just a 2 or 3 game skid where they're going to bounce back and stay on top of the Big 12?
Personally, I think this is just a testament to how this past year has been, in terms of preparation and whatever. I would base that off the end of the season to see if you have Lincoln Riley in 2021 or not. If you don't have Lincoln Riley, we could see the same situation as, maybe a Florida State team, somewhere to that nature. But as far as falling off, they have looked rough, and I'll definitely go ahead and count them out of, any meaningful conversations going forward. But as far as falling off, I think they'll pick right back up next year, assuming that Lincoln Riley stays. I don't want to count them out yet because, me and you are both huge Lincoln Riley fans, so not going to count them out just yet.
Yeah, I think it's a little too early to tell because Kansas State and Iowa State are not bad teams. They're not top tier in the Big 12, but they're not terrible. And with a freshman quarterback in Spencer Rattler, got some a learning curve that he's going to have to get over and stuff. So yeah, I don't think you can count OU out yet. Maybe if they lose this week to Texas, it kind of just depends on how they finish out the season because they'll still have to play Oklahoma State. So who else will they have to play this year? I'm assuming they're going to play TCU somewhere down the road. They'll play TCU somewhere down the road, and so I think it all kind of rides on this Texas game. I think if they beat Texas, then they turn the season around. If they lose, then I think it's going to continue to be a downhill fall for at least the 2020 season.
Right.
But so you said you got Oklahoma in this game?
I do. I'm gonna stick with Oklahoma. I didn't think they would win the Big 12 this year. Going into it, I really didn't know, but I could see them losing as much as I could see them winning. So I wasn't really just going to say, yeah, I predict them to win. But as far as the Red River Shootout, Texas, we thought open week, they looked good, good enough. Then last week, losing to TCU, unranked TCU, I don't think they have it. I just don't. Great quarterback. Quarterback could probably play anywhere in the country, with the exception of maybe 5-6 schools. But I like Oklahoma in this one. I think Lincoln Riley has them prepared, especially after how it's making him look. So I think we see a different Oklahoma team this week. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do think this will be a completely different Oklahoma team than we've seen the past 2 weeks as far as a mindset and a performance. But I'm gonna go opposite. I think Texas is gonna win it, and it just kind of comes down to the leadership of Sam Ehlinger. I think you never know what kind of team you're gonna get with Texas week in and week out.
Right.
But in my eyes, I think Sam Ehlinger's gonna have them ready to play. I think Joshua Moore is gonna continue his dominance. He missed all of last season, so he's on a what do you call it? He's got something to prove this year. He's got a chip on his shoulder. And then Keontae Ingram, their running back, hasn't scored all year. He's due for a touchdown, due for a big game. So I could see it going either way. But I think just it kind of comes down to Sam Ehlinger versus Spencer Rattler, and it comes down to experience in my eyes in these big games. So I'm putting money on Sam Ehlinger in Texas to win this one.
Oklahoma's throwing the ball well. And Texas is also.
Yeah.
But with Oklahoma, I think their problem is the outside of defensive problems, rushing yards. Spencer Rattler threw for 300 last week, but last year they had more rushing yards in the opener against Houston than I think they have all 3 games combined this year. So get the rushing game going. I know Spencer Rattler can run the ball. That'll help out, because Jalen Hurts was a big-time runner, run first quarterback. But I think if they can get the rushing game down, I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, the over-under for this game is set at 72. I'm definitely going to say that's going to be an over by a good amount. I see this being a high-scoring game, being a lot of points scored, a lot of yards put up. It'll be fun. That game is, let's see, what time is that game? 11 a.m. on Saturday. So we'll get the day started off early. But we'll get into the SEC now and talk about last week with Bo Nix and Auburn versus Georgia. Absolutely abysmal performance from Auburn, but at the same time, it was a dang good showing from Georgia. I think it was PFF, Pro Football Focus, did an article on how Kirby and their defensive coordinator gave them a lot of different looks that Chad Morris hasn't been used to. They brought a lot of pressure and things of that nature. where it was just more, in my eyes, I think they were more outcoached than outplayed. I think it was
Uh-huh.
Auburn, a decent team this year. We don't know exactly how good they are yet. They beat Kentucky, who was ranked to start the season. They just played a top 5 team in the country in Georgia. So it's kind of still early to tell what really we're getting with Auburn this year. But to me, I think it was more just outcoached than outperformed, in
Yeah,
my
and
eyes at least.
you look at too this game, Auburn Georgia. It's usually played week 6, week 7, week 8, even somewhere in there. And this year it was the second game of the season, so I'm not going to count them out yet. And all that being Auburn, not going to count them out yet. But Bo Nix just did not have the type of game I was expecting. 1 interception, no touchdowns, less than 200 yards passing. Nobody caught the ball really good at all. Like I told you, I had a wedding Saturday night also, so I only got to see the second half. But I think I counted like 6 drop passes from the start of the third quarter until you could tell this game's over. 6 good passes.
Yeah, and that goes back to Bo. He was pressured on 22 out of his 47 dropbacks. So, I mean,
Yep.
that's almost half of every time you get the ball, you're getting pressured. Having to run out of the pocket, get rid of it sooner than you want to. Um, but yeah, I mean, Bo didn't play good, but he also didn't have a lot of time to make the throws that he was making the previous week against Kentucky.
Yep.
So I don't, Bo said it himself. He needs to play better. I think we all can agree to that. But at the same time, he has a very, very young offensive line where I think 4 guys are new, but 3 of them are like actually new. One of them's a grad transfer. So they're gonna have growing pains. Their defense, you lose Marlon Davidson and Derek Brown. Georgia ran the ball for 5.1 yards per carry, and they ran inside zone 31 times against Auburn. And that's definitely not going to get it done, especially when you go against Alabama, who can run the ball behind a big offensive line and a good running back. Florida can probably run the ball. They're going to run it in a different way. They're going to spread you out and then run it. But nonetheless, Auburn's going to have to fix that if they want any chance at winning games this season.
Yeah, I agree. Which
So
this week too. Let me say this right quick. Which I'm still bought into the Mississippi State hype. They lost to Arkansas last week, who I believe that was their first SEC win in like 2-3 years.
it was
2-3
first
seasons.
in a while, yeah.
But still Mississippi State, new coach, same as Arkansas. Both teams are still trying to figure things out, and Mississippi State, what they did week 1, and then Arkansas to come back and beat them week 2. This could be a big win this week. If Auburn pulls it out, I think that's not something to look at now and just be like, oh yeah, Auburn's going to win the football game. They actually have to go out and win. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. But yeah, it'll be fun to see how both teams pan out. I think, like you touched on a minute ago, the biggest thing is this game is normally played mid to late October, November, somewhere in there, and this week is this year is the second game of the season.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, before the season was shortened and pushed back and whatnot, I think it was supposed to be played second week in November, something like that. So you go from having to have a full season to study for this game to having to prepare for it in a much more shorter time. And at the same time, Georgia didn't even know who their quarterback was last week. Probably didn't know who their quarterback was 15 minutes before the game started. So how were you supposed to prepare for that from a defensive standpoint on, looking at it from Auburn's point of view?
Yeah. And,
So,
too, this is we've been talking about how bad Auburn played, which is true given what they were ranked. But let's not take away how well prepared Georgia was defensively. It just, to me, looked like, from highlights and then watching the second half, that Georgia could not do anything wrong to stop them. Like every play, like they were prepared. They got a couple 10, 15-yard plays. Other than that, I think it was majority punts or turnovers. So Georgia looked, they looked like a different Georgia team than I thought was going to come out this season for sure.
yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I wasn't high on Georgia to start the year anyway, just because they lost their quarterback, and I was expecting to see that freshman play a good amount, but
Hmm.
we ended up not seeing that. It is what it is. But the Stetson guy, I mean, he didn't look that bad. He didn't look great. Um,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I mean, he's worked his ass off to get where he is, and I respect that for him. I
Yeah,
think they
and
said
Georgia ran the ball well too. And
yeah,
Samir White 2 touchdowns, right at 100 yards on 20 carries. So they did. They were clicking. They came out and looked a lot more prepared than Auburn did.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Georgia, like I said, I slept on them a little bit at the beginning of the year. They kind of opened my eyes to them. So we'll see how the season pans out for them. Definitely a good offensive showing, just as it was defense. But we'll stay on that, and we'll get into the next topic, which is a team that has a really, really good offense and a really, really good defense that a lot of people, unless you're up past 9 o'clock on a Saturday night and your team's done playing, then you're probably not going to watch, and that's BYU. Zach Wilson, the highest graded quarterback this season in college. BYU is 2-0, 3-0, I think. Beat the hell out of Troy. Won last week up big. So when you look at their numbers, um, you say, oh, they've played crappy teams. That's why they look this good. I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think it don't matter who they're playing. I think BYU just looks like a really good football team.
Yeah, and nobody was talking about before the season. BYU's not like your Clemson or your Alabama, a team that it's been top 5 recruiting for the last 5-10 years. A team like that. BYU is just a team that looks like they have a lot of veteran players. What I'm looking at right now, they start 1, 2, 14 upperclassmen. So I mean, I think that's a huge thing, and it definitely shows on the stat sheet. And only one interception on the year, Zach Wilson. So turnovers definitely a big thing. If you're winning this big, I don't guess it really matters. But yeah, I watched them play a little bit against Troy. I didn't watch them play Louisiana Tech, I believe. But after I saw that me and you were going to talk about them, I was like, man, I'm gonna go. I didn't realize they were 4-0.
Yeah, I think so. Let me look really quick.
Yeah,
I know
no,
they're for
3-0,
sure 3-0.
3-0.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
3-0.
But yeah, I mean, Zach Wilson has, you said, one interception on the year. He has as many touchdowns as he does incompletions. Like I said, he's the number
That's
one graded
impressive.
quarterback. He's got 11 touchdowns, 11 incompletions. He's the first. He leads the NCAA in QB rushing touchdowns and completion percentage. What actually made me want to talk about this is I like the BYU football page on Facebook, and they posted a graphic about Zach Wilson. And I'm going to read off some of the things he has on there. But today, right before this, they posted another graphic about their defense and their offense. And that's what's really impressive. And I think that's why we don't need to sleep on BYU. So,
Uh-huh.
as I said, BYU or Zach Wilson, first in completion percentage, first in rushing touchdowns among QBs.
Yeah,
Second,
look and sorry, go ahead.
second in yards per attempt, second in pass efficiency, third in passing plays for 30 plus yards, and fourth in passing plays for 20 plus yards. Their defense, on the other hand, number one in the nation in total defense, number one in the nation in total offense. Number one in offensive yards per play, total offense, first downs per game, offensive pass efficiency, and offensive pass completion percentage, and then passing plays for 20 plus yards or more. That's just offense. Their defense is second, first, second, third in
Yeah,
respective stats.
looking at these scores, I don't know what's more impressive: putting up your least amount of points being 45, or giving up your most points, which is 14. So either way you look at it, BYU's clicking, and they got a couple big games coming up. That's what I was about to say. In the next 5 weeks, you play Houston and Boise State, which could be 2 statement wins that could give you the right to say, hey, we're in the playoff talk. Especially if you keep winning by that margin of victory and maintaining the stats of a top tier team. I don't see why not.
Yeah, I mean they're ranked number 15 in the country. They're 3-0. They were supposed to play Army. That game's postponed. I'm looking at their schedule, and they have a 3-week window where they might could fit that game in between November 21st and December 12th. But like you said, they play Houston, they play Boise State, they play San Diego State, and if they're able to fit that game in with Army, Army's ranked number 22 in the country, so that's another win for them. And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. If BYU runs the table, goes undefeated, and keeps dominating teams like this, has a number one offense, number one defense, etc., you easily make the case for them to get in over any team from the Big 12 or any team from the Pac-12, or sorry, Pac-10.
Yeah.
And even though, I mean, they're playing, and this is another thing too. BYU is limited to who they can play because they can't go play an SEC team. They can't go play a Big 10 team. They can't go play a Big 12 team. They can't go play a Pac-12, Pac-10 team. So, like, BYU has literally kind of been forced to play who they can play. Like, BYU's an independent team. They don't have a conference. So they're playing whoever they can get their hands on. And that's going to be a disadvantage for them. But I don't think it'll matter. I think if they keep putting up numbers like this, then they have a really good case for being in the playoffs.
I agree. Play a local team too. Coming up on the 21st. That'll be a fun watch. I don't think North Alabama will compete, but it'll be cool seeing a local team playing on that caliber of a game or that stage.
Yeah, that'll be their second Alabama team they've played this year. And that's, I believe, the week after UNA plays Jacksonville State. Actually, no, that's like a month after. Yeah, because they play in October. Speaking of, we have an interview coming up with a running back from North Alabama. So if you guys want to check that out, that'll be going live on the channel next week. We'll be putting that on social media, so you'll know when it goes live. That'll be our first ever interview from the Point After podcast. So I'm excited for that one. We have a couple more interviews coming out, a couple high school coaches, a couple college coaches. So if any of that interests you, be sure to subscribe so you know when those videos go live. But back to non-interviews in college football. We'll go ahead and get into two teams who have a good case for the playoffs, are going to play good teams that could also be in the playoffs, and that is Miami and Clemson, the highlighted game for Saturday. Basically, whoever wins this, as long as they perform well the rest of the year, they're probably going to win the SEC, or the ACC, sorry.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of these two teams will be playing in the college football playoff. I'm taking Clemson this week. I think it's business as usual for those guys. I think they come out and do their thing as usual. Trevor Lawrence, but I will say this: Miami does have a great chance. I think this has to be the Eric King's best game he's going to play all year. Regular season wise, but definitely got to have it going with the quarterback play if there's going to be any shot of them winning this game at all.
Yeah, Clemson's a 14-point favorite to win the game. Their ESPN's Football Power Index has them 86% chance to win the game going into it. I think people aren't giving Miami enough credit. They're ranked number 7 in the country. They've beat Louisville, who's a decent football team. They beat UAB, who a lot of people don't give enough credit to either. UAB is a really good football team to be in their 4th year since they brought back the program, I think, 3rd or 4th year. So you're looking at essentially the first recruiting class that Bill Clark was able to bring in when they reinstated the program, who are just now being juniors or seniors. So UAB slept on, and Miami beat them by a couple scores. So to me, I think Miami has the best chance to win this game than they have in the past couple of years, and that's kind of because they've been tested. We were talking about Auburn and Georgia playing earlier in the season than they're expected to play or what they're used to playing. Miami's had to fight the first couple of weeks, and Clemson hasn't. Clemson beat Citadel, where Trevor Lawrence threw 9 times. They beat Virginia by 18, and then they beat Wake Forest by 24. So I think Miami has a decent chance just for the sheer fact that they're coming off of a bye week, and Clemson hasn't been tested yet this season.
Yeah, and Miami also has the ACC's number 1 offense. So, like I said, I think this definitely has to be an offensive game. I think it's going to be a rather high scoring, upper 30s, upper 20s type game. But yeah, of course, the defense has to come out and limit what Travis Etienne, I believe that's how you say it. I'm not real sure. I've heard it multiple different ways. But him and Trevor Lawrence, of course, are going to put up numbers, but how much numbers do you let them put up?
Yeah, I think the rush game is going to be, we have two really good quarterbacks, two Heisman potential quarterbacks, but I think the eyes are going to be on the run game this Saturday. Travis, whatever you said, one of the best running backs in the country. But then on the opposite side of that, Miami has the number 12 rushing offense in the country, while Clemson has the number 10 rushing defense.
Yeah.
So obviously the quarterbacks are going to perform well on Saturday, but I think it's going to come down to whichever team can dominate the rush game that's going to come out on top.
And I'll say this too. I think you'll probably feel the same way. Given whoever wins, the quarterback position, I think, will be my Heisman front runner going forward. Given that they play not just a completely sloppy game and get the win, I'm thinking to win this game, both quarterbacks have to play good ball. So, whoever comes out on top, that team's quarterback will probably be my front runner moving forward, just because this will be the biggest test when it comes to our Heisman predictions and the nation's Heisman predictions. It's the first game that we've got a head-to-head matchup.
Yeah, two great quarterbacks. Derek King coming from Houston. He's actually, I want to say this is his 6th year, maybe 5th, but a veteran quarterback in Derek King he's played well all across his career. I think this is the first time he's actually had a legitimate shot at winning the Heisman. Because when you play with Houston, you're going to put up numbers, but if you're a good player, those numbers are expected. So for that reason, they're not going to respect you as much as they would if you did it in the ACC. So Derek King comes to Miami, puts up the same numbers in the ACC, and now he's in the Heisman talk, which is well deserved. He's got 736 yards on the year, 6 touchdowns, and 157 on the ground and a touchdown too. So I think it's going to come down to just the rush game. I think if Derek King can get involved in the rush game, that'll help Miami open it up more for their running back too. But I'll tell you something too. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to throw his first interception on the season. I think Miami's defense, we're going to see the turnover chain come out. I'm looking forward to it, man. I think it's going to be a really, really good game.
Yeah, I agree. I'm excited for it for sure. I know me and you will be consistently texting each other during this game. So
yeah, the only thing I hate is Alabama got moved to the exact same time. So Alabama and Ole Miss is at 6:30, and then this game is at 6:30 as well. So
I'll be running the multiple TVs in the living room for sure. So.
Yeah. I'll have Brooks' computer pulled up with the Alabama game, and then this game on my computer. So it'll be fun. But since we're already on our Heisman talk, we'll skip playoffs, come to Heisman, and come back to playoffs. So, obviously we both have Trevor Lawrence, we both have Derek King. Who else are you looking at to win the Heisman this year outside of those two?
Outside of those two guys, Kyle Trask, easily one of my top contenders right now, especially from ACC or SEC play. And, like we were talking about the other day, and this may sound a little biased, I think Mac Jones has made his statement to be in the conversation, but I don't think he will contend and win given the amount of names and players that are on the squad at Alabama. So outside of the two guys in the ACC, Kyle Trask is going to be my only other guy right now. Costello will probably still be in the mix, I think, after the loss last week and not as good as a performance. It's safe to say he probably pushed himself out of my top 5, top 4. But, no Big Ten play right now, no Pac-12 play right now. So it's really hard to say. But outside of what we have seen, Kyle Trask is definitely, I think it's safe to say he is should be in the talk.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I have him down. I also have Kyle Pitts as well. I'm going to touch on that in just a second. But yeah, this kind of goes down to what you were saying where, Mac Jones is going to be in the conversation, but there's going to be so many other good names that he's not going to be really considered. Costello is going to put up enough numbers to win the Heisman, but just for who he is, and I'll say this, his numbers won't reflect his actual performance. I think his numbers will make him look like a better quarterback than he actually is. I don't think he'll be a legit Heisman contender. to me, you have Trevor Lawrence and you have Justin Fields, who just based on their performances last year are going to be the front runners. And then you're basically going to have a middle of the pack who's going to be Derek King, Kyle Trask, Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, players like that. But I'm going to ask you this question. Why did you say Kyle Trask is in the conversation to win the Heisman and not Kyle Pitts when over half of Kyle Trask's touchdowns have came to Kyle Pitts, and Kyle Pitts actually has 12 catches on the year, 6 touchdowns, 6 first downs?
Well, I don't rank my Heisman contenders based off of touchdowns solely. I think my main reason is just efficiency. That's my main thing, and Kyle Trask is completing over 70% of his passes so far, and his touchdown to interception ratio is 10-1. So his total QBR is 92, and he's almost at 1,000 yards already on the season. I don't, I'm a big guy on consistency. I think it would be like the same thing saying Jalen Waddle. Why is Jalen Waddle not getting as much talk? For me and you especially, as Mac Jones. Well, we knew, last year Kyle Pitts was a big player. We knew Jalen Waddle was a big player last year. We didn't know that Kyle Trask could compete the way he has, and vice versa. Mac Jones, and they have. They've proven that. So do I think Kyle Pitts has the same season without Kyle Trask throwing the ball to him? Possibly. But do I think it's as good as it has been? I'm going to say no. You can definitely tell there's been some work involved in the offseason between them two. So definitely going to go with the efficiency thing. I mean, that's being a quarterback. I think that's what you look at. And he's leading the team, and I don't think they have half the success they have if he's not under center. So that is why I like him as between the two as my top.
Yeah, I agree with that, and that's something I like discussing with people is how when you look at a quarterback who's got a lot of numbers, but a lot of his numbers are to this wide receiver. How do you pick and choose whether you put the quarterback in the Heisman conversation or you put the wide receiver? And I think you brought up a good point. It comes down to efficiency. To me, it's a lot harder to pick a quarterback that can put the ball where it needs to be, that can make the reads, that can know who's going to be open, put the team in the right position to have those big plays, than it is for the wide receiver to run a route designed for him to get open. Obviously the receiver has to put in a lot of work if it's man coverage or to sell a different route, and whatever. But I think you said it. We knew Jalen Waddle was going to have a good season coming into this year. It's a lot harder for Jalen Waddle to make a case to the Heisman when he was putting up the same numbers last year with Tua at quarterback. So you throw in a brand new quarterback with Mac Jones, and Mac Jones is putting up the same numbers as Tua, well then it's kind of like, okay, well if he's doing this and Tua was doing this, then you have to put some respect on Mac Jones' name just for being able to do what he has to do to have those numbers. And that goes back to Zach Wilson too. Zach Wilson's a 92 graded quarterback he's right behind Mac Wilson. Mac Wilson's 91.8, Mac Jones, 91.8. Zach Wilson is 91.6. So you get two of the top 3 highest graded quarterbacks so far in the season. That's why I think they deserve to be in the Heisman conversation over any wide receivers. I told you this the other day, Mac Jones does not have a turnover-worthy throw all year, even though he's thrown an interception. And with Wilson, I'm not sure if his interception was graded as turnover-worthy or not. I would like to think not, given his grade, but yeah. So I was just curious to hear your point of view and how you decide who should be in the Heisman conversation, whether it be a quarterback or receiver, when the numbers are basically to that wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So I think we can agree our Heisman front runners at this point: Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields whenever he starts playing. Derek King, Kyle Trask. I really don't see anybody outside of that without being like, okay, well, if you put this guy in, then you have to put this guy in too. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's the same thing. There's certain guys that are just putting up equally, the same stat line in terms of touchdowns, receptions, receiving yards, rushing yards. Haven't really seen a big standout running back so far. I mean, have we? I guess Clemson's Travis Etienne would be the best one from my eyes. Maybe
Yeah,
Chuba Hubbard.
I was thinking Chuba. He's carried Oklahoma State to 3-0. So, but yeah, I agree. I don't think there's been any uh, running back that's just kind of like, okay, this guy's got to be in the Heisman conversation
Yeah,
that I know of at least. So.
yeah. I mean, Najee Harris is doing just as good as those three, and nobody's talking about him. So
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. So we'll get into the college football playoff, and I've got 6 teams wrote down. Um, so you obviously have your top 4 that makes it in, and then I went ahead and included the top 2 that's on the bubble. That kind of just depends on how the rest of the season plays out.
mm-hmm.
And did you include Big Ten, or are you just going with
yes,
who's
I've
playing out
got.
now?
Well, that's just because I think Ohio State will find themselves in the playoff. If they don't lose their typical game they shouldn't lose, and I don't think they will.
Their bad loss to Iowa and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, if they can stay away from that, I agree. I think they are in. So I've got my top 4 as of right now without Ohio State. I think Ohio State's in. They'll be in later on. But right now, I've got Alabama at 1, just because they've played a decent Texas A&M team, to whereas Clemson hasn't really played anybody. So for
Mm-hmm.
that reason, I've got Alabama at number 1. This week, both teams win. I'm putting Clemson back at number 1 unless Miami is just awful. And then Alabama blows out Ole Miss. So I think you can't really go wrong at where you put either of those teams, 1 or 2. So we'll just call them the top for first. 3, I've got Florida, just because of their offense, been dominating. And then
Mm-hmm.
4, I've got Georgia. If they can keep up with how they played last week and show me it wasn't a fluke, then I think they'll definitely be in the conversation later on in the season.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I pretty much have it wrote down the same as you, except I just wrote like in my 1 seed I'll have SEC winner / Clemson. Um, then I have Ohio State at 3, and then I actually have my SEC loser at 4, and that's just so through these games that we've seen. Again, no Pac-12, Big 12, or Big 10 teams have been seen yet, so SEC loser at the 4 spot, which I will assume be Florida, Georgia, and or Alabama, by the looks of it. But yeah, I wrote down 2 bubble teams as well. I wrote Oklahoma State, given that they win the Big 12. I think that'll be good enough rights to say, hey, if we're undefeated, we won the Big 12, we can be in. And I put BYU, just because like we said, if they finish the season undefeated and have the same, like we said earlier, have the same statistics in terms of best offense, best defense in certain categories, top 3 in others, I don't see why they couldn't be in the conversation.
Yeah, I agree. I've got Oklahoma State as one of my bubble teams. I also wrote down Miami just because, this week it is that test for Miami. If they beat Clemson, run the table, you're in. Um, Lose to Clemson, but lose a close one, I think you're still in that bubble. If you lose bad, then you're out, and you're back to the Miami that we thought you were the past couple of years. Um, I agree. I think BYU is, like we touched on earlier, a team that could find their way to the playoff, or potentially miss out like UCF did, just because they're not a Power 5 school. But another team I has is North Carolina. They play Virginia Tech this year, who is kind of in the same spot as Miami. Both those teams are. Are they as good as they look through the first 2 or 3 weeks of ACC play? I think it could go either way. But it goes to the same situation as Miami. If North Carolina blows out Virginia Tech, then it's like, okay, well, Virginia Tech's not as good as we thought they were, and Miami is just as good, if not better. Not sure. I'm going to pull up Miami's schedule. They don't play, not Miami, North Carolina. They don't play Clemson. They finished the season with Miami, and let's see, their only other opponent they play is Notre Dame. So they play Virginia Tech this week. They have like a 5 or 6 week break. I say break as in like not as good teams, and then they play Notre Dame and Miami back to back. So I think if they run the table, you're looking at a 1 loss, potentially undefeated North Carolina team who's going to be ranked top 10 in the country with 2 good wins or a good win and a decent loss to another top 10 team in the country. So I think North Carolina is a team that you could possibly keep an eye out for making a run at the playoff too.
I agree. And from a North Carolina standpoint, having Clemson and Miami play this week, it kind of, either way, one of those teams are going to lose. So going forward, hey, we're in the conversation right now just because, like, if they win this week against Virginia Tech, a top 20 team, say they handle business then, and then you watch, say, Miami lose the game, you're sitting at a pretty spot in the ACC where, hey, we're going to play. We have potential if we can get through that, 2-game stretch Notre Dame, Miami, playing Clemson, and possibly even being a one-loss team going into the playoff conversation. Or had they win the ACC, they will be. I agree, or I think that they should be in the playoff if they win the ACC. But having that game that early this year will definitely help from a mental standpoint if you're on the North Carolina football team.
Yeah, do you know how the ACC is running their championship this year? Is it normal, like you have the Coastal and the Atlantic Conference, or is it just the 2 best teams in the ACC based on record and win percentage? Do you know?
I really don't. I guess, with the addition of Notre Dame, I don't really know if that really plays any difference in how they will determine that. I'm going to assume it's by division. So
That's what I thought. But when I'm looking at the standings and stuff, it has it listed as just all
right,
14, 13 teams, whatever it is, on there with Notre Dame included. So like you have Clemson, Miami, North Carolina, and Virginia Tech are all 2-0 tied for first, and then Notre Dame is sitting at 5th at 1-0 in conference play. So that'll be curious to know too. That'll at the same time impact who gets into the playoffs from the ACC, because you could have a one-loss. We'll say Miami beats Clemson on Saturday. North Carolina don't play Clemson. Then you have a one-loss North Carolina team and a one-loss Clemson team. It's like, who do you, one team is going to get screwed out of being in the ACC championship. So
yep,
that's the thing with this year, man. I think it's going to be really, there's going to be some really good conversations as we get into the latter half of the year.
a lot of unhappy people.
Oh yeah. Normally you get one team that gets screwed over. You have the 2017, 2018 Penn State. You have the Ohio State, whatever year it wasn't Penn State. TCU got screwed over one year. I think Baylor got screwed over as well. So I think this year could be a year where you see more than just one team screwed over.
Right.
We may have to do just an episode of who got screwed instead of do an actual podcast. But yeah, it'll be fun to see how things play out. Anything else you want to touch on college football related or playoff related?
Nope. That's said all I need to say about the playoff. Until I see the Big Ten, Pac-12, it's going to still be hard for me to judge who I think outside of your typical Alabama, Clemson, that Florida. Those 3 teams I think are your locks right now. Other than that, it's still up in the air.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think really the only team you could see making it from the Pac is maybe Oregon.
Yep.
Maybe. Just depending. They don't have Justin Herbert anymore, but I'm sure Mario Cristobal has a good recruiting class coming in, so they're always an option. But we'll get into predictions for Week 6. Cover all the SEC games, and then we'll touch on 2 games we've already previewed: Clemson, Miami, Texas, Oklahoma, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, and then we'll also touch on Kansas State, TCU, and Central Arkansas and Arkansas State. But we'll start off with the SEC with the home team, Alabama and Ole Miss, 6:30 Central Standard Time kickoff on Saturday night in Oxford. I'm assuming you're picking Alabama to win that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it matters where they play. Do you know, have they said we're still playing Oxford? Have they moved it, due to the weather?
As far as I know, all they did was they just pushed the time back to give the weather time to get out of there. I don't think they're going to – I think if they would have moved locations, they would have done that rather than pushing the time. LSU and Missouri. I guess we talk about that game next. That game flipped from at Baton Rouge to in Missouri. But
Yeah, I don't think it'll play a difference.
I don't either.
Personally.
I just think that's the only game that has been affected location-wise
Right.
for the Hurricanes. So, yeah, I think I got LSU winning that one. Missouri's decent, young, just not. With Derek Stingley back, LSU's a different team than they were in Week 1. So I got LSU taking that one.
Yep, same way. I have LSU as well.
So we got Arkansas and Auburn. Arkansas coming off a big win last week, a momentum swinging win for that program in my eyes, and Auburn who has to bounce back this week. I think if they blow it against Arkansas, you're looking at a 5-5 year for Auburn in my eyes.
Yeah.
But then again, I mean, we say this all the time. They'll have a 5-5 year, and they'll somehow wind up beating Bama and beating teams that they should not beat.
Right.
I've got Auburn winning it, but I think if they don't win it, then they could be in some trouble.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a close one, but I as well have Auburn. They should win this game, but do they? We don't know.
Yeah, you never know. It must be hard being an Auburn fan, dude. We are spoiled being Alabama fans, and when we have to experience years like Auburn, I don't know what we're gonna do with ourselves. But anyway, we're gonna get to two top 25 matchups. We got Florida and Texas A&M and Georgia Tennessee. Florida and Texas A&M, I think that'll be a pretty decent game. Kellen Mond hasn't played great the first 2 weeks of the year. I think he finds his groove eventually. Hopefully it's this week and Texas A&M can stay in it. But I've got Florida winning that one probably by 10, 12, somewhere in there, at least 2 scores.
I agree. I think Florida wins by double digits, whether it be 10 or 24. I don't know. But I do think they win, and I think they win pretty soundly. I think Texas A&M comes out strong, being in College Station. But other than that, I think Florida just handles it like they should.
Go ahead and you can carry us into Georgia and Tennessee. May actually have a chance at being a decent football team this year. What do you think about that one?
I have this game. I have a star beside it just because I think this could potentially be our SEC upset of the week. You look at the rankings: Tennessee 14, Georgia 3. It wouldn't necessarily be considered an upset, but in terms of how Tennessee has been in recent years, they've got a lot of hype going into this season. Great recruiting class now and coming up. I could see them winning this game. I really could. I think Georgia would have to play bad, but other than that, I'm rolling with Georgia. I think they win in a very close game, and I think it keeps. I think this game could keep Tennessee in the conversation. Win or lose, you just can't lose that much, because you could still get some big wins, later in the year to keep you in the conversation. But choosing between the two right now, week 3, I'm definitely rolling with the Dogs.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like you said, they still have 2 big games down the road. They still have to play Alabama. And they still have to play Florida. So this could be a momentum swinging game for Tennessee, win or lose, just depending on how they play. Mm-hmm. Like you, I'm going with Georgia. But I think something that's going to help Tennessee out is a lot of people were calling for Jeremy Pruitt to get fired last year. If I'm not mistaken, I think 60 people on that team was a sophomore or freshman, not counting red shirts. So Tennessee was just very young last year. They get their quarterback back. So you have an experienced team who basically all have a year under their belt. That's going to go a long way. You're playing an SEC East who isn't as good as the SEC West. I think we all can agree with that. You have Georgia and Florida who's really good, and everyone else is just kind of about the same besides Vanderbilt. South Carolina was a ranked team. They picked up a good win against them in week 1. So yeah, I think Tennessee's improved this year. I agree with you. They could upset Georgia. I think it would be Georgia playing bad more so than Tennessee just outperforming. But yeah, I'm gonna roll with Georgia, and then we already covered LSU and Missouri, South Carolina and Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's just not a good team. South Carolina, I'm not sure if they're still ranked. After that loss to Tennessee, I figured they would drop out. But I think they're a decent team too. I think they're right there with Tennessee Kentucky, Ole Miss, middle of the pack. The 8 through 4 somewhere in the SEC. Don't think they're in the bottom tier, but I've got South Carolina winning that one.
Yeah, I have South Carolina as well. Vanderbilt's just, to me, they spend a lot of their time on academics, not really the sporting side of things, and it shows. But football in Tennessee, if you're not Memphis and or Tennessee, you don't really get mentioned much if you play for Vanderbilt. So, yep, I think South Carolina wins that one as they should. But what do you think about Mississippi State and Kentucky? Two teams I think are fairly even after the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think KJ Costello comes to play. I'm not sure what kind of look he's going to get with Kentucky. I think LSU gave him a lot of cover 2, cover 3, and that's why he was able to feast. And then last week Arkansas played a lot of man. They didn't run enough mesh. In my eyes, my opinion, mesh is how you beat man coverage, and they came up short last week against Arkansas. So I think they turn it around this week. Costello is going to put up, like we said, he's always going to put up numbers. He's going to have big games, but his numbers aren't going to reflect what kind of quarterback he is. So in my eyes, I've got Mississippi State winning it just because I think it's still too early on Kentucky to tell what kind of team they are. But Mississippi State's going to score points, going to put up yards, and I'm going to stick with the Bulldogs winning that one.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with not Georgia. I'm with Mississippi State as well. You look at Kentucky, and I think now looking at the Auburn and Kentucky game, I think Kentucky lost that game because of the late turnovers and potentially a missed call or two. But that makes them look not as bad. So I think we see a good game, but I think we see a little bit better game by Mississippi State. I see a lot of turnovers in this game. That's one game I put in parentheses. I put turnovers. I think both teams are combined 8 turnovers on the year. So I think we could see high turnover game, possibly high scoring. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm with Mississippi State as well.
Yeah, and Graham Harrell touched on this the other day. The air raid is all about repetition. It all comes down to how many times you rep it. I think he said there was one day when he was at Texas Tech with Leach, they ran 4 verts every play in 7-on-7, every play in team. So most practices, from what I can tell, you get about 3 team periods and 1 or 2 7-on-7, depending on the day of the week. So you're looking at 4 or 5 sessions where they did absolutely nothing passing the ball besides run 4 verts. And I think that's going to help KJ Costello a lot down the road. He's going to turn the ball over in the beginning of the year. Like you said, this week he's probably going to turn the ball over twice or so. But as the season goes on and he gets into week 8, 9, and 10, he's going to be a completely different quarterback. I think still being early in the system, he's going to put up yards, but he's going to turn the ball over, and that's going to allow Mississippi State to lose a couple of games that they shouldn't lose. This could be one of them. But I think as the season goes on, Costello is going to get better, and we'll be more confident in picking Mississippi State when it gets to that point. I believe that is all the SEC games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we'll get into we already touched on Clemson, Miami. You took Clemson. I took Clemson. I could see Miami winning it. I would like to see Miami win it. I think that would be fun to talk about. But I do think Clemson comes out on top of that one. Anything you want to add on to that game?
No, I'm with you, man. I think Clemson just. No, I think we see a good game. I hope we see a good game enough to where it's close enough to where, like you said, Miami could pull out a victory. But if I'm being honest with myself, I think Clemson wins pretty easily.
Yeah, I would like to throw some money down on Miami and win big, but I'm not confident enough to do that. So yeah, we'll stick with Clemson on that one. Texas, Oklahoma. You took Oklahoma. I took Texas. I like when we don't agree on everything.
Yeah.
It leads to good conversation. That's a game that we touched on earlier in the video. So if you're just now joining us, you can rewind it to the first of the video where we talked about Texas and Oklahoma. But I'm taking Texas behind Sam Ehlinger. I just think his leadership is gonna give them an advantage over Oklahoma. We got North Carolina and Virginia Tech. We touched on it a little bit earlier. Who do you think in that one?
I'm definitely going with Tar Heels. Like I said earlier, this win is as big of a win as something coming in the last 2 weeks of the season in terms of UC Clemson and Miami playing. One of those teams are going to lose. You look at yourself being North Carolina. Hey, we're in a good spot, to compete for the ACC and or the playoffs. So I think this week is a big, big win, and or if they win, this will be a big win. And everybody that knows North Carolina knows that they have the coach that has been there, played in these big games. I think he's going to have them well prepared, and I think they win.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. Sam Howell is going to perform really well. And also, Twitter agrees with you. 94% of people on Twitter said that North Carolina was going to win this game. And I'll go ahead and give you the results while I'm here. 73% agreed that Clemson would win. We have 56% took Texas over Oklahoma, so that's kind of a game they could see going other way. And then 67% said that Georgia would win. So, so far Twitter seems to agree with us. We'll see if we're all correct. And then we both agree with North Carolina. But yeah, I think that game's going to be a really good one too. Another game I think is going to be really good is Kansas State and TCU, where let's see, Iowa State beat TCU, TCU beats Texas, Kansas State beats Oklahoma. Um, so I think that's going to be a really good game. But I'm putting a little bit of faith in TCU's offense. And Kansas State, like we said, they're one of those teams you never know what you're going to get. TCU's riding high off of beating Texas. I can see them. I don't know if it'd be considered pulling an upset. I'm not sure who's favored, but I see them coming out on top against Kansas State.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think after last week, TCU is going to have a lot of momentum going forward. And I look at Kansas State, and I don't know what stands out more to me: the win over Oklahoma or the loss to Arkansas State. That alone tells me that you know there's the potential to be there that they will not play to their or to play at the same level they played the Oklahoma game, and they could easily let one get away from them. But in terms of those two teams, TCU and Kansas State, I think TCU definitely has the momentum right now. It's safe to say that if they come out clicking, they should handle business fairly easily.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Kansas State loss to Arkansas State, and that's going to get us into our next game that I want to talk about is Central Arkansas, the FCS school, and Arkansas State. Central Arkansas has beat Austin Peay in the college football opener down in Montgomery at the Crampton Bowl. They lost by 10 to UAB. UAB is not a bad team, so that kind of speaks to Central Arkansas. They beat Missouri State, I think, 27-20, and then they lost last week to Trey Lance and North Dakota State by 11. And like you said, Arkansas State beat Kansas State. They've lost to Memphis and they've lost to Coastal Carolina. They got blown out by Coastal Carolina last week, bad. So Arkansas State is kind of just like Kansas State. You don't really know what team you're going to get with them. They're 84% predicted to win this game. I think it's going to be a lot closer than that. I don't know if you were able to watch Central Arkansas and North Dakota State last week. I watched them a little bit. Trey Lance didn't look good against him, and I don't know if that was Central Arkansas just being that good, if it was Trey Lance not being as great as what other people thought he would be. But I'm gonna go with Central Arkansas with the upset on that one. I think Arkansas State's just too inconsistent. Don't know who you're going to get with them. Central Arkansas played really well last week against the defending FCS champions, and they have 4 games under their belt. Arkansas State's had 2 games postponed, so I'm gonna go with the Bears on that one. What do you think?
I think I'm going to take Arkansas State because I'm looking at their schedule, and the only game I have watched Arkansas State this year is a little bit when they played Memphis, and yeah, they lost by 13, and they also gave up a crap ton of points to Coastal. That's what this says, but that alone, those 2 losses, I don't know too much about Coastal. I don't think they're as good as a team as Memphis, and definitely not Kansas State, but looking at that win against Kansas State, that tells me, okay, they can compete with players and teams that have bigger, egos, I guess you could say, better athletes. And I have watched Central Arkansas. I watched them play UAB and Austin Peay. Really love their quarterback, Braylon Smith. Think he's going to have a big game, but I do think Arkansas State wins.
Yeah, it'll be a good game nonetheless. This is going to be really big for Central Arkansas as they prepare to make a run at the FCS playoffs in the spring. That, as far as I know, North Dakota State's not playing in the spring. I believe I heard that. I know Trey Lance says it playing, but they do have a good transfer quarterback coming in. So I don't expect North Dakota State to drop off if they were to play. But I may need to check in on that. As far as I know, they're not playing, which leaves the FCS wide open. So it'll be good for Central Arkansas to play against these FBS teams and prepare for the spring. But yeah, this will be a good game. It's over-unders at 64. I could probably see that. I could see this being a high-scoring game. You got two good quarterbacks. Like you said, Braylon Smith has played really well this year. He's got 6 interceptions, but he's also thrown for 800 yards. He's played against some good opponents with UAB, North Dakota State, and Austin Peay. So I think it'll be a really good game. I think I'm looking forward to it. It's on ESPN3 at 2:30, so that's in between Texas, Oklahoma, and then the Clemson and Alabama games. So probably gonna tune into that one.
Yeah, definitely be a good one to tune into. I wasn't expecting them to be on our pick'em this week, but now that they are, it gets me interested to watch the game, learn more about these teams, the teams I don't really associate myself with as much. But like we say, doing this podcast, it's opened my eyes, opened my college football mind to every team, from your small schools all the way to your Alabamas and Clemsons. So this will be something that I won't really have any pressure watch. I don't know why, but I'll watch games. It doesn't even have to be Alabama. I'll feel the pressure. I don't really feel it for this game. I just get to sit back and enjoy it.
Yeah, that's the same way with me. Is I'll watch just for instance like a Miami game or Virginia or somebody, like, even if you just like have a favorite to win that game, but at the same time, like, it has nothing to do with you or how you go about your daily life or whatever, you
Right.
still feel a sense of like, wow, I really want this team to win. And like you said, with what we're doing here, it's opened my eyes to more than just the SEC. Like last year, I never would have known this much about BYU and Zach Wilson. I never would have known that he's the top 3 graded quarterback in the college football, leading in a lot of these different categories. But I like it, and we're not only raising awareness for ourselves in college, but for everybody that watches this as well. So I hope they're getting as much out of it as we are.
Yep.
But yeah, man, that'll wrap up everything we have here for week 2 of college, I think. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we call it a day and get out of here?
No, that's really everything meaningful that I'll be able to pay attention to. I think that just about covers it. Covers a lot of the main headline topics. So I'm good with it if you are.
Yeah, I'm good with it. We still have one more podcast to record tonight, so if you guys have any interest in the NFL, that will go live tomorrow. I know this is getting out late on the Thursday night, but hopefully you guys are still able to tune in and catch it some point before Saturday's kickoffs. But yeah, so that's going to do it for week 6 here at the Point After Podcast, the Respect the Raid movement, home of it. Yeah, I've enjoyed it. We got lots of things in the works. We got live shows, we got interviews, we have apparel, we have all kinds of different things. If there's things you want to see from us, just leave it in the comments or tweet it. Send us a direct message. We're on TikTok, we're on Facebook. You can follow us on all social media. Interact with us. Let us know you're watching, what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy, and how we can improve this for your viewership. Matt, if you don't have anything else, I'll close this out, and we will see you guys next week.
Yeah, that's all for me, buddy. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.